Motherhood is where it all begins. It is our literal origin story, and as a therapist, I knew we could do a better job supporting new moms. Come with me on this journey as we build the digital village, one family at a time. What if you're a therapist who specializes in working with new moms and you're expecting your second baby yourself? Kathryn joins me today to talk all about the ins and outs of expecting number two, the highs and the lows. I hope you enjoy. Kathryn, I'm so glad you're here. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Krysta, for having me.
Yeah, now those of you who do not know, Kathryn, in addition to being a wonderful therapist at Dancy Prenatal, who specializes in working with families and pregnant and postpartum women, Kathryn is also expecting number two.
Yes, I am in early March, so coming up soon here.
You are glowing. Has anybody told you that yet?
A few people, yeah.
You really are. Like, if anybody is able to see the video of you, just like have the most beautiful rosy glow. How are you feeling?
Feeling pretty good. You know, it's the third trimester, so there's the slowness, the shorter breath. So if you hear me catching my breath, having to get used to that again. But yeah,
like
feeling really
in the
good.
rib cage.
Exactly. Yes.
Like there's no room for food or oxygen.
Yes, exactly.
How are you sleeping these days?
Decently well. I find, figuring out the right pillow stack is kind of the key to having a successful night or not. So, yeah, I think I have most of the pillows in the house now kind of fit around me. So that works nice.
Yeah. How old is your first?
My first is 2 and 8 months now. So he will be 3 a month after this one's due.
Oh. I was in prep for like our conversation. I was just really curious. The word on like the internet is that the best split is like 2 to 4 years.
Right.
Have you heard that?
I researched it before getting pregnant. I was
Did
very
you?
curious. Yeah, I did. I was very interested. I'm an only child myself, so I had very little experience personally with, what any age gap felt like. So I did a lot of research and I asked friends and different people around me. And, I read that 2 to 4 years is optimal in a sense, but I really kind of concluded that it's to each their own and that there's pros and cons to all different options. And, yeah, that sometimes people can, whether it's gender preference or age gap, kind of have an idea set on, one or the other and how it might be. And it really depends on who this little new being is and their personality and temperament. And, it's only, I think, worth a grain of salt. So
Yeah. And you are not finding out the gender, is that right?
we did. We're having another boy. So
That's
2
right.
boys. Yeah.
That's right. 2 boys, so brothers.
Brothers.
Do you have a name chosen I mean, you don't have to share if it's a secret, but I was just curious if you have the name chosen or are you planning to decide after?
Probably decide after. It's funny, for the first, I was on it, baby books. It was hard to get past, I don't know, D, because there would be so many, right? But
Many on the list, yeah.
yeah, so many on the list. But this time around, once in a while, my husband will kind of think of a name and I'll say while we're cooking dinner, oh, what do you think about this? I heard this name, and I'll do the same. And but it's, yeah, a little bit more casual, and I think we'll just kind of see once baby's born, see what fits his personality.
I think this is kind of what you were just talking about, but do you notice that you feel more casual this go round compared to the last? Like, what have you noticed is different for you?
Yeah, definitely more casual. I think the novelty aspect of having a baby is different, right? Since I've had one, I've gone through birth, I've gone through the pregnancy. Of course, it's different in its own ways, but thinking about it, the novelty piece is, I think, very influential on just kind of responding a little bit differently, or I'm needing to make extra effort, to really do certain things like sit down, but also just connecting with baby because I have another toddler running around.
Yeah, I was
And
gonna say,
so,
how's it being pregnant
yeah,
with a 2-year-old? They always talk about the sibling
harder.
age gap, but I'm like, well, a 3-year sibling age gap is a 2-year-old while you're pregnant.
Yes,
So there's that.
there's that.
Yeah,
And with
that
that being
major part of
said,
it.
I'm grateful that he's mobile, he's totally independent, with so many things
Yeah.
versus if it were to be a shorter age gap, I think that would actually be harder on my
Sure.
body.
Oh, for
So,
sure. Mhm.
but the toddler piece is hard, the
Mhm.
lifting up or this or that. I'm a big proponent on receive as much support as you can possibly get. And
Mhm.
so my husband is feeling that on a daily basis of what that looks like because it's all the little things that as
Yeah.
moms we're used to doing. And I'm trying to clarify my boundaries and how they shift as I get more pregnant with my
Ooh.
toddler and
Yeah, tell me
needing
more about
support.
that. Like, what's shifting for you as you're getting more pregnant?
Um, just, kind of the things that I would do that were just easy for me to do, just help him get dressed or the nighttime routine or whatever it might be. Especially a lot of play, actually, which is a bit of a sad piece that I'm not as
Mm,
active with him in a way.
mm.
Um, but yeah, I'll really kind of pull on my husband to do these pieces that I didn't really think twice about. I would just get them done and keep the ball rolling, all these pieces in the air that us moms are always making happen. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
I am curious because so when you started working with pregnant expecting moms and I know some areas that you really like working with are related to like birth planning and
Mhm.
anxiety and
Yes.
that whole sort of transition of like transitioning
Yes.
in the postpartum period, like that is your jam and you're so great at it and your clients like consistently just say glowing things. We feel so good
Oh,
about that.
thank you.
But you started that gig like after having your first and before
Yeah.
getting pregnant with your second. So I'm really curious how it feels to be a therapist that like specializes in helping
Mhm.
moms in transition and like you are pregnant.
Yes. Yeah, it's a
Like
that's a
how is
great
that?
question.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I it's different. So after having my first and really clarifying this is the specialty I wanted to go in with my career, um, that's it, a lot of the stuff around whether it was nursing or postpartum and anxiety, I was already immersed in that personally, myself, really learning about it or navigating through it myself. And so it was very much in alignment, and as much as it is in alignment to be pregnant and support my clients, there's also a piece that I have to be very mindful of, not, I don't know, like kind of actively separating someone else's experience, someone else's
Mm,
fears, someone else's
mm-hmm.
story, and
Yeah.
narrative that they're going through, and mine.
Yeah.
I think I'm big into psychoeducation, especially around the neuroscience that goes on in the pruning matrescence while we are going
Mm-hmm.
through pregnancy and postpartum. And I notice that the neurological shifts that I'm going through and that every pregnant and postpartum woman goes through impact me holding space for my
Mm-hmm.
clients, right? Where in a way, I'll feel different or even more deeply in a personal way that I have to kind
Mm-hmm.
of, manage and take care of
Mm-hmm.
myself
Mm-hmm.
extra
Yeah. And be like,
because,
that's
yeah,
theirs.
that's their
That's
thing.
theirs.
This
Yeah.
is not my
Like,
thing. And
as
what
I'm
is my thing?
working with a woman who's pregnant and
Yeah.
expecting number 2 and she's having a hard time and maybe like,
Yeah.
okay, but that's hers.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just continuously checking in with myself and various processes and,
I love
receiving
that.
help from my team and that kind of thing. But it's
Mhm.
different. There's a shift. I think there's kind of this feminine bond connection, especially I find with just, I don't know, other women, and as I'm going through it too at the same time, it's very special.
I love that. I was just talking with Becca, and one of the things that, is so special to me is that we have this, workplace of people who are different stages of motherhood themselves, but
Yeah.
many of whom have young kids. And it's kind of really magical to me to be creating something where as we are learning to support our clients,
Mhm.
there's also a support for each other and a learning
Yeah.
to support ourselves that's like happening on this layered place that to
Yeah.
me, I have to think is like kind of how it's supposed to be actually, which is that we are
Mhm.
supposed to have babies in a community of people so that as we're having our babies, we're like around other experienced, wise women
Yeah.
who can say, like, here was my experience. You're doing great. It's okay.
Mhm.
Offering that support. My opinion and why this is such important work to me is like that's really lacking for a lot of us. I know is lacking for me. Some people are very fortunate in that they have really supportive family and multi-generational support, and that's great. But I don't find that that's like the norm
Yeah.
anymore. And so there's something to me that's just really beautiful about you're in the process of participating in creating life and in becoming.
Mhm.
You became a mom, now you're becoming a mom of two, and like you're
Yes.
in that process as you're supporting other moms in that process.
Yeah.
It's messy.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's magical.
It's
It's
magical. It's sort
yeah.
of how it's supposed to be,
Yeah, I
right?
totally agree. I feel like that digital village that you talk about, is
Mhm.
very much a piece at Dancy Perinatal. And then, I noticed that too in these different layers, even with my clients.
Mm,
My life has actually mirrored a lot of my clients' life with baby number two. And
mm,
I've learned so much from them and from their experience, or I'll have moments of transparency where I'll pull from my experience as it's applicable to them and really help to normalize things. Just yes, that's I'm experiencing that too. And that's a question I have as well. And yeah, just being able to show up for each other and be
I like that
supportive
phrase,
of
show
it.
up for each other.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
When
important.
I work with clients who are expecting, it is often like transition from 1 to 2, because I feel like the ones who are going beyond 2, it's like a whole different thing at that point. But the
Yeah.
ones going from 1 to 2, I'm curious, like, your thoughts on this. I feel like I've observed and experienced myself, honestly, a sense of grief
Hmm.
that I don't know if it gets talked about very much,
Yeah.
where there is something special with you and that first baby that you can kind of like sense is going to be altered by
Yes.
the transition, right? And like,
Hmm.
as much as we want to be rooted in love and excitement, there's also this like little other piece. Like I'll see like
Hmm.
videos of like my baby and like, those last moments with
Yeah.
them as you're getting largely pregnant and like the change is coming. And I'm just curious as you're in your third trimester, not that I'm trying to like activate something,
No, no,
emotional for
these
you,
are
but I'm curious if you can speak to like what you've noticed in yourself or in your clients around that piece, because I feel like there's not enough permission given for that, frankly.
yes. No, I think the grief piece is something that is very important to discuss going from one to two, but also going from none to the first one,
Mm.
right? But it's different, kind of this what
Mm.
we're grieving piece, right? From, kind of single or couple relationship, that type of lifestyle to having one and grieving your life before and who you were. I know I went through that. And I talk with a lot of clients about that. But then going from once you've adjusted and you are getting in the flow of having one, I think that happens all over again in a new way, going from one to two, right? You've developed this relationship with this one beautiful being that you can really have so much one-on-one time with and focus and attention, and orient your life around. And then what happens to that relationship once it becomes two,
Mhm.
right? And I think guilt is something that, mom guilt is talked about a lot, but the guilt piece, I think, is very much, I see and hear and feel, anticipate that will be very amplified actually with
Yeah.
going from one to two.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm so glad that you talk about that because I remember, so going from 1 to 2, I remember experiencing that feeling of guilt
mhm,
because initially it felt like not just a huge loss for me, but for my son. It felt
yeah,
like I had like, in my mind, I had done something to him.
right.
Like we had this great thing going and we were like
Mm.
in the groove and life was really good for you. And now everything has been upended. And of course, you're tantruming and you're acting
Mhm.
out because you're struggling in the transition as well. And of course, every adult in your world has less to give you than they did before. So it's
Right.
like you need more while we have less to give.
Mhm.
And there was this moment of like, I remember really early postpartum taking him out for ice cream, my firstborn,
Mm.
and sitting and looking at the fountains near where we lived and like, talking to him about the change. And he's literally so little, he can't quite articulate, but being like, I know it's hard. And, um, how's it going for you? And I think the best he could say was like, I'm just sad because what did he say? Because something about you're really busy.
Yes.
Like my postpartum hormonal mom heart just shattered into a million pieces while we're licking ice cream cones staring at a fountain. I was like glad he wasn't looking at my face because I just was like, and the best I could say in that moment was like, I'm sad too.
Mhm.
I'm sad because I'm busy. And I knew that in that word busy, or, however he said it in his little kid words, what he really meant is like, you're not available.
Right.
Right? And like, I miss you. I miss your
Yes.
availability. And all I could say was like, me too. I miss my availability too.
Yeah.
Because even as I'm sitting here in this moment, having this bonding moment with you, I have to get back at a certain time,
Mhm.
right? My body is in like recovery. So there's just
Mhm.
like discomfort and pain, and my breasts are engorged.
Yeah.
And like there's all these distractions in my body that I'm in discomfort. And I'm not like totally present, and I have to pump, or I have to nurse, or I have to whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
And like I'm wanting to bond with you, and I have like 2 minutes before we have to go back and go home and feed your
Yeah.
brother. And, and I remember that you're right, that word guilt creeps in. And I hate the phrase mom guilt. I
Mhm.
hate it because I'm like, well,
I
why
know.
doesn't dad guilt exist? This is a stupid phrase. I refuse. It's so real though.
Yes.
It's so real that I think we take that transition, and as moms, we're like so likely to turn it into, because this hurts, that means
Mhm.
something's wrong,
Yeah, or
right?
I'm doing something wrong. An action or a behavior of mine is wrong.
Because I'm failing in some way
Yeah,
because this hurts, right?
exactly.
So I like to talk about it in terms of grief because I like to say, like, no, it's
Mhm.
actually really real. And
Yeah.
you're both grieving and
Mhm.
celebrating.
Yeah.
And it's both are true.
Mhm.
And guilt is thorny because guilt says you're doing something wrong, when I just think actually it's a sign that something's going very right. Because if you have a
Yeah.
really good attachment to your first,
Mhm.
then there's something to disrupt.
Mhm.
Right? It's actually a sign that like you had a really strong attachment because it's feeling the shock waves.
Yes.
You're going through shockwaves, so your connection is going through shockwaves. And I remember, okay, so here's my like clear memory though, is that I ended up on the phone with the midwife who was at my second child's birth, and we were talking, and she was just one of those lovely, sort of wiser older women who's seen a
Mhm.
lot, and just like gentle in spirit, and just like took a lot of time talking to me. And she, after talking about the birth and the medical stuff and the recovery stuff, she was like, well, how's it going? And actually I'm remembering this now. What really killed me was that my firstborn had gotten a cold. He
Mm.
had stayed with grandma and grandpa while I was giving birth, and then he got a
Yeah.
cold. He came back with a cold, so then we had to keep them separate.
Oh no.
Yeah. So like the
Amplifies
introduction,
everything.
everything, because I can't even like snuggle with him, and he can't snuggle with new brother, and like we're trying to keep everyone healthy, and like, yeah, it was all just like meh. So I'm very newly, just a few days postpartum, talking with the midwife, and like I'm like, well, actually it's not good because like he's sick and we're keeping him separate. It's so sad.
Mm.
He wants to hold his baby brother so bad, and like, whatever. And she goes, validates all of it, all real, all sad,
Mhm.
all true. And then she goes, just wait until the first time that baby laughs at Big Brother.
Mm.
And I grabbed onto that like a lifeline in that moment
Mhm.
because I could not see it from there. I couldn't see it from
Mm.
there. It seemed like it was just going to be hardship forever. And I had wrecked my firstborn's world, and I had wrecked our household, and like, and also this poor new baby. Like, I love you. I'm not trying to say you're bad news, you're good
Right.
news, but like guilt, 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 right?
Yes, can't win either way.
Can't win. So then she said that, and I grabbed onto it, Kathryn. Like, that was my lifeline. Okay,
Mm.
when baby laughs at Big Brother, then you're going to know that you gave him something. You didn't just take something away.
Yes.
And it was just prophetic words. It was so true. The moment that we're all hanging out and it catches you by surprise, the moment that baby wakes up enough to go, I know you,
Mm-hmm.
right? To the older sibling, like, I'm
Yeah.
familiar with you. And that toothless grin and the giggle and the, oh my gosh, the way that a baby will light up at their older sibling like nobody else.
Mm.
Like nobody else. They're just like stars in their eyes for that older sibling. And as soon as I saw that, where I saw my firstborn like goofing off to get the baby to giggle, and then I
Yeah.
saw the baby like anticipating what he was doing, and I just sat back and watched him. Like, I'm tearing up just thinking about it, because it was like, oh, okay. Actually, I didn't take anything away. We're a
Mm-hmm.
family.
Yeah.
That's that thing between the two of them that's going to grow over the years. That is something.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just that there's less of me, but also it's that there's like more of the family,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that's my word of advice to anybody listening who's like anticipating number two or early in the days of number two. Like,
Yeah.
just hold on, just wait until you get to see the connection between the two of them develop. And then you'll be able to bask in the fact that you gave them something.
Mm. Thanks for that. That's so wise and helpful.
And that came from an
Yeah.
older woman who was like an experienced midwife. And that's what I mean when I say the village. Those
Right.
little moments,
Yeah.
those little gentle moments, I think are so transformational, especially when we're like very pregnant or newly postpartum.
Mm-hmm. Such
Because
a
every
vulnerable
moment,
place.
yeah, every moment feels
Yeah,
like a lifetime. Every
exactly.
day is like so much, so much
Yes.
in the day, right?
Mm-hmm. So much so.
When you look into like this transition for yourself, what, nervousness do you have? And what are you like looking forward to?
Yeah. I mean, I think the nervousness about my relationship with my first,
Mm,
and going through postpartum again and how that is on our whole family system, really, right?
mhm,
Roles are going to be shifting and changing. I've heard from a lot of clients kind of the piece of, right, you have the default parent perspective, right? Often of the birthing parent to the newborn, but then how often the other parent is with the older child
mhm,
and not wanting it to be so much like that, really wanting to try to
mhm,
do my best to also carve time away to be with my first and thinking
mhm,
ahead of time, what could that be early postpartum, right? And what
mhm,
could that maybe evolve into later on in postpartum?
mhm.
So trying to kind of orient myself and set my like emotional self up to succeed with being realistic with
Yeah.
um my abilities and my limitations at each stage. um
Are you
yeah.
somebody that like loves postpartum time for yourself and just like glows and just settles into it and wears it comfortably? Or are you somebody who's like, okay, here we go? Because I'm
I
definitely the second one. Just we're being really clear about this. For me, I'm like,
yeah,
okay, dang it, here we go.
I don't know. Yeah, it's hard. I like, that I love the newborn baby time when
Mm,
it's, smooth sailing is just precious, right? Those moments where you're in the groove and everyone's quiet and it's peaceful. But when things really hit the fan, it gets overwhelming. And,
so fast, yeah,
yeah, it's
yeah,
intense. So I'd say a little bit of both.
yeah.
I know I get I'm very clear about kind of the need that my body needs to recover. And then I'm
Yes, good.
also a very active person. So I find a lot of internal conflict with needing to recover and, kind of taking care of my physical body, healing my pelvic floor, and wanting to just get back to the gym and, do these pieces. So a lot of just taking it one day at a time, really.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
that resting thing is so hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just hard because there's such a craving to feel something familiar, to have like a familiar
Exactly.
routine. So
Yeah.
you kind of like want to go back to like what your familiar routine is, and that's often too much activity.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Familiar abilities and kind of
Hmm.
being out and about, all of it, feeling, like my strong self and, but needing to rest. So,
Hmm.
and,
Yeah.
trying to do the right thing with resting in the beginning. So I don't have
Yes.
to kind of
Yeah, because
make up
there's
for it
so many
later.
people groups that have traditions and they're different timelines.
Hmm.
Like some will say 10, 10, 10. Some will say 5,
Hmm.
5, 5. Some will say
Hmm.
30. I mean, there's different timelines, but what they all amount to is that there's a solid chunk of time, like a minimum of 5 to 7 days, where you are just essentially bedridden. Bedridden is such a
Yes,
negative term. Let me take that back.
I know.
But you are like attached to the bed. Well, the reason I'm saying that is because the phrase that I'm thinking of is like, X number of days in the bed, X number of days next to the bed,
Uh-huh.
right?
On the
So like,
bed, next to the bed.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, on the bed next to the bed. So not bedridden, but like attached to the bed. Like
Right.
that is your home base for a
Yes,
solid 5 to 7 days. And I think that's like a hard ask when you have a toddler.
it is.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What's that like for your relationship with your toddler when they're saying, Mommy, let's play, get up, come on.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
All of the above. Do you feel like he is like tracking that there's a change coming? Like, does he understand? Is he old
Yes.
enough to know like
Yes.
a baby is coming?
Yeah, I think so. It's funny. It's been a journey thus far,
Mhm.
just being pregnant with a toddler. Especially once I started showing. It influenced our story time at bed where he couldn't sit on my lap the same way
Oh,
because
yeah.
baby was slowly taking away
Taking
his
up the lap.
space. So
Yep.
it happens even before baby's born.
Totally. I
Um,
remember my
yeah.
baby in my belly kicking him.
Yes. Yeah.
Has that happened where I
It's
would like pull him into
happened.
my lap and baby be like thump, thump, thump?
Yep. Exactly. Yeah, I know that's happened. And then my son's says, "Oh, the baby," and he kind of there's moments, beautiful moments of connection. But we had a definitely a little bit of like some bumps in the road, I'd say around my second trimester where I was still nursing my toddler, and then it became something that was too uncomfortable for me with the pregnancy hormones, and I decided it wasn't working for me anymore. So we weaned as a result. And that was really hard emotionally,
Mhm.
because I'm pregnant. I
Mhm.
am not able to do this wonderful bonding thing that we have together. So that was kind of the first big piece. I didn't, explain it to him like that, but all these pieces kind of,
Yeah.
started happening simultaneously. And
Mhm.
I noticed probably about a month or two after weaning, my son started to kind of be like anti-mommy and hardcore pro daddy. Like,
Mhm,
yeah. And
mhm.
I thought it would only be about a month or maybe two, but it was for about, I mean, probably 5, 6 months. It's only shifted in the last, I'd say, week or two, and I'm now in my 7th month
Yeah.
pregnancy. So that's another thing that it's been challenging navigating kind of my son's anticipation for the baby to come, and my body and my shifts and changes of how I can be involved with him and
Mhm.
all of these pieces. But he knows we're reading,
Mhm.
books. I'm trying to follow his lead with it, not just be pointing it out all the time or that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
it's been a process, a transition already.
Yeah. I've been just thinking, if you have any book recommendations, let me know and we'll put them in the
Yeah,
show
I
notes.
do.
Yeah.
I
Like to
do.
that point, I'd love to transition with the time that we have left into like what the takeaways are for people who are anticipating baby number two. What tools, what resources, what tips, what perspectives, do
Mhm.
we see? We have this advantage of like a lot of getting to see into a lot of people's experience, getting to see
Mhm.
the intimate up close of a lot of people's postpartum experience, I think is
Yeah.
like a unique vantage point that
Mhm.
it used to not be unique, but now it is. And so,
Mhm.
you know, for me, one of the things that I would say to anybody listening who's getting ready is to give some really clear thought in your postpartum plan to how your support system can help support baby your firstborn. And what
Mhm.
I mean by that is, I was surprised that what I wanted most of all, more than come make me a meal, come clean my sink, come hold the baby, more than any of that because I had all done that all before. So that didn't
Mhm.
feel as overwhelming to me. What I really wanted was for a beloved extended family relative to come spoil my firstborn.
Mm.
What I really needed was for them to come in and pump him up and take him someplace special and make him feel special, because that would have felt to me like such a lifting of where my
Yeah.
concern lie. At that
Mhm.
point, it's like so funny how the shift is, because your firstborn, you're just rocked by baby. Like
Right. Oh yeah.
the laundry and the whatever, the bottles and the breastfeeding and the
Yes.
sleepless nights, right? Like but second born, you're like, okay, I've done that. It's not that it's not hard, but it's
Mhm.
that it's known for the most part.
Right.
There's always surprises thrown in for fun, but mostly it's known.
Mhm.
And my partner and I have like worked out the dance between the two of
Mhm.
us. But what I've not done before is like this firstborn who's grieving, who's acting
Mhm.
out, who needs some love and spoiling. And we're like so strapped for energy. I would just love somebody to come in and give you just like a ton of attention.
Oh
So
yeah.
I recommend anybody who's talking about postpartum, if you have those people in your life, those aunties and uncles or grandmas and grandpas or those trusted adults who love your
Mhm.
kid, you can set up dates that kid can look forward to in early postpartum if you feel comfortable with that. Like, I think that's gold to be like, guess what?
Mhm.
Auntie's coming today and they're taking you to your favorite place. And then that kid is like, yay. And then Auntie comes in and is like, you're a big brother or sister. Yay. Like that shift into the positivity, like I could have just wept postpartum,
Yes.
right? Like you're so emotionally invested anyways. Like, thank you for making it a positive in this moment. Like when firstborn was covered and I was just taking care of baby, it was like, okay, I've done this.
I
Like
got this.
I've
Yeah.
got this, right? Another thing I
Yes.
would say is if you're supporting a family who's expecting number two, is that I think there's even more of a need for behind the scenes stuff, meaning like the mess gets out of control really quickly
Mhm.
when you have a toddler.
Mhm.
Right? Because it's not just baby mess, it's like toddler mess.
Oh yeah.
So I think that's another way to support postpartum if you're the partner or if you're like just in a role of support for families, to have a plan for the chaos, the mess.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well said. No, I totally agree. Another thing that I've heard a lot about and I'm trying to do as well myself and getting ready for is to have, for mom to have preferably every day a quality chunk of time, can be 5-10 minutes of something with the firstborn, that
Mhm.
you and the firstborn can really rely on being a
Mhm.
time that's for the both of you, you know, a little
Yeah.
taste of how it used to be in a sense.
Mhm.
And it also gives the other partner good time for bonding with baby, right?
Mhm. Love that.
Yeah, so
Like
for
read a
me,
book, go for
yeah,
a
read a
walk.
book.
Or,
Exactly. It will
mhm.
be, yeah, read a book before bed. You know,
Mhm.
that's what I love doing with him and I've always done with him. And so keeping that up and having that time, if there's no other time in the day, that's just with him, you know, it can be that. So
Mhm. Yeah.
it's really
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. And while we're talking about this, I'm thinking, other things that I would say is be so aware that the way that the firstborn hears you talk about this becomes their inner narrative on it. So
Mhm.
while we want to validate, like, I know, like I did, I know you're feeling like I'm not here and I'm not present and you miss me and I miss you too.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying that we're going to invalidate their experience, but be aware that your casual language is being internalized by them. And
Yes.
so saying things like, oh my gosh, little brother is just such a fan of yours. Look at
Mhm.
him think you're just the best thing
Mhm.
ever. And you're always going to have a fan in that one. They're going to be your bestie
Mhm.
for life. Those casual throwaways, I have found now that my children are older and my children are, my oldest is in high school, like we're well past that phase. I have found that internalized narrative has come to play where I like play out, where I'm
Wow.
like,
Yes.
aren't you guys just the best of friends? Look at how you make each other laugh. Right.
Oh, yes.
And and um and so playing on that and just being aware that like those, even when you're talking to your partner about it, letting your
Mhm.
oldest overhear you say, "Oh my gosh, isn't he the best brother? He's just
Mhm.
such a natural. Look at the way that he's just taking to that role and look at how his little brother adores him." Right? Like
Yes.
letting them overhear it, I think is so powerful because there is a loss of intimacy and time and energy for them in the parent dyad. But if
Mhm.
that can be replaced by the connection that they get to have in the sibling role, it can actually
Mm.
be like, I think ultimately really, really healthy and really good.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
great pointer. I'm gonna keep that in mind.
Keep it in mind. Yeah, let
Yeah.
them. If somebody gave me that advice a long time ago, like let them catch you talking well of them.
Yes.
Like let them catch you. Like just
Yeah.
like they're around the corner and be like, oh my gosh, they're amazing. Oh hi.
Yeah. Yeah, it helps to kind of create that and manifest that.
Yeah, there's a
So,
lot of manifestation of like speaking
mhm.
out to like, oh my gosh, look at the way he's hanging on every word you're saying. Do you love your big brother?
Yes.
I know he does. Right. Right.
Yes.
Because, and I say this because this is my truth. Like when you're in that transition period, you're like, this is so hard. This is hard. The baby's taking the time and the energy. It's easy for that to become the verbalized
Yes.
narrative.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think another piece too, because there is a loss of that one-on-one time with the first one, is to, I've heard from a lot of clients and then, you know, all around me, to involve your older one as much as possible. You know,
Mm,
if the baby's crying, hey, what do you think that he needs? What's going
mhm,
on? Do you think this is he hungry? Does he want a diaper change? Just even if you know, right?
That's so
Involve
smart.
them,
Yep. Yeah.
right?
Because then when they give an answer like, oh, you've
Yeah.
solved it.
Wow, you did this.
Mhm,
Kind of you're helping their attunement in a
mhm.
sense. And
Oh,
then
that's
really
beautiful.
keeping them involved instead of, oh, wait, baby needs to diaper change, go away. Hey, can you hand me
Mhm,
the diaper? Let's see what's going on. Really
mhm.
normalizing all of these pieces and helping to facilitate their bond from
I
day
love
one.
that. I think that's so beautiful because I think some parents are afraid to do that because they think like, oh, I don't want to like, I don't know, like put obligation on my older child or something, right? But I think, and
Yeah.
so that they will just kind of be like, hey, let me separate like the care and giving to the baby from the older one, right?
Yeah.
But I think what you said is just so important. I want to repeat it, which is that there's an opportunity to model attunement.
Yes.
Attunement meaning like awareness of and connection with the needs of the infant, which in psychology, we know that infant attunement is so important
Mhm.
to things like attachment and neural connection and
Yeah.
self soothing and growth and all the good stuff. Like attunement is a really important building block. And so, in our invitation to the older one to do that with us, like we get to
Mhm.
model attunement.
Yes.
I wish there was research because I have a suspicion from my personal experience that when really wise moms do that, that actually there's some kind of three-way attunement that is occurring,
Mhm.
right? Because when you're doing that, you're also attuning to your older child.
Exactly.
Hey, could you grab a diaper? Good job. What if we put it like this? Oh, you helped. Like you're not just attuning to infant, you're attuning to the older sibling in that moment. So there's some three-way where they're attuning to you and your requests, they're attuning to baby and baby's needs. Like
Mhm.
how cool for an infant to be in this sort of triadic
Mhm.
attunement, like looking between
Yes.
the two, right? Which I think they get with really great partnerships and like parents, hopefully. But how neat that
Yeah.
there's this other place. And I just think that's beautiful. I don't think I did a very good job of that because I think it required multitasking that my brain wasn't always capable of.
Or
But it's a really good idea to remember when you have the bandwidth for it.
yeah, when you can.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. When you
Yes.
can. Well, I'm so
Exactly.
excited for you. I'm so
Thank
excited to
you.
get to meet your little one and
Yes.
hear all about your little one, hear about the process of him coming into the world and how it's going in the transition. And I just wish you the best postpartum baby moon with lots of support and love. That's what
Thank
I hope for
you.
you. Thanks for
Thank
taking this time with us today.
Yes, thank you, Krista. This is wonderful.
See ya.
Bye.